I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been with Lisa for almost 8 years. We met in college, hit it off pretty quick, and for a while I thought we were solid. She's the kind of woman who's always had a sharp tongue, a quick wit, and a streak of bitchiness that she's never really tried to hide. But you learn to live with it. I figured it was just her way of keeping things interesting. Things started feeling off a few months ago. She'd snap at me more often, dismiss my concerns as overthinking, and sometimes she'd be gone for hours without telling me where she was going. I'd ask, and she'd brush me off, say she was working late or catching up with her friends. Honestly, I didn't want to believe anything was wrong, but I knew her too well. Something was different, and it wasn't just her mood swings. Then there were the little things: her phone, always hidden away in her purse, her sudden interest in new makeup, new clothes. She'd always been a bit vain, but suddenly she was dressing up. More, always making sure she looked perfect before she left the house. The biggest red flag: she started avoiding me during intimacy. Said she was tired, stressed, or busy. Little excuses, but when I pressed her about it, she'd give me that same bitchy glare that made me feel like I was annoying her just by asking. But I guess what really broke me was the way she'd lie with a straight face. She tell me she was working late, then I'd find texts on her phone that didn't match her story. Nothing explicit, but enough to make me suspicious. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was paranoid, maybe I was overthinking it. I loved her after all. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. Then came the night everything changed. I decided to surprise her and show up at her office after work just to see what she was up to. I figured maybe I could catch her in the act or at least get some answers. I parked a block away and waited, watching her come out of her building. But what I saw wasn't what I expected. She got into a car with a guy I'd never seen before, laughing, touching her arm like they were old friends. My stomach dropped. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the way she looked at him, it wasn't just friendly, it was something else. That night I finally knew she'd been lying to me this whole time. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I went home and just sat there, shaking. I couldn't process it. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with some guy she met at her work, an exoneration lawyer no less. That piece of shit had been helping me when I was wrongly imprisoned for a crime I didn't commit, and I had trusted her to be loyal. Turns out she'd been playing me the whole time. I felt sick, betrayed, like I'd been punched in the gut repeatedly. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? After everything we went through, after I trusted her with my life, she was sleeping with a lawyer, someone who was supposed to be fighting for me. The next morning, I couldn't keep it inside. I called her at work and told her I knew. She tried to deny it, of course. Said I was imagining things, that she was just talking to her lawyer about legal stuff. I lost it then. I told her I saw her get into that guy's car, that I'd been watching her for weeks. Her face turned a bright shade of bitchy, and she started insulting me, calling me paranoid, insecure, stupid. She even said I was jealous, like that was some kind of proof that I was crazy. But I knew the truth. I saw the evidence with my own eyes, and I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. After the initial shock wore off, the anger started to settle in. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how she lied so effortlessly, how she refused to own up to what was so painfully obvious. Lisa always had a way of twisting things around, making me doubt myself. That bitchy, manipulative smirk she threw at me when I confronted her only fueled my rage. I wanted to tear her apart, but I knew better than to do something reckless. Instead, I started thinking about what I could do to make her pay. That night I couldn't sleep. All I could see was her face, that smug look, and the image of her with that lawyer. I kept replaying everything I'd seen, every little sign I ignored, every time she dismissed my concerns as me being paranoid. I was furious at myself for not seeing it sooner, but more than that, I was furious at her for throwing away everything we had. I felt betrayed, humiliated, like a complete idiot for trusting her. How could she do this? After all the years, the promises, the love. It was like she just turned off those feelings and replaced them with some sick game. Then I started to get practical. I needed proof, something undeniable that I could hold over her head. I remembered the nights she was out late, the missed calls, the secretive texts. I decided I'd do some digging on my own. I got hold of her phone when she went to bed, scrolled through her messages. Nothing explicit, no I love yous or can't wait to see you, but enough to see she was definitely hiding something. There were some strange numbers she'd been texting, and the tone was flirty, maybe even more than that. I couldn't put my finger on. But I knew she was cheating. I also knew I had to be smart. Confronting her again without evidence would only make her deny more, call me crazy, or worse, turn things around on me. I needed a plan, a way to catch her in the act again if I could. That's when I remembered something I'd heard about her lawyer, God. I didn't want to believe it, but it was too coincidental. That lawyer, Mark, had been helping her with some legal stuff, but I found out they'd been meeting outside of official appointments. I decided to look into the prison visitation logs, thinking maybe I could find something there. And I did. They'd been meeting in secret and not just for legal consultations. The logs showed meetings on days she claimed she was working late or at the gym or whatever bullshit she fed me. But these visits weren't coded as legal meetings at all. They were just marked as personal visits. She'd been sneaking out, going to see him, probably more than once a week. Every single day I was still locked up, she was with him. That's how I found out she'd been pushing our marriage. Aside hiding her affair behind lies and cover stories, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach all over again. Every time I thought I was starting to get a grip, something else hit me harder. How much more was she hiding? What else had she been lying about? It was clear she'd been planning this for a while. She'd been cheating with someone I trusted to help me. And all the while I was sitting in jail, fighting for my freedom, completely blind to what she was really up to. The betrayal was so deep I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. But right now, I knew I had enough to blow this whole thing apart. The pieces were coming together, and soon she'd have to face the consequences of her actions. When I finally sat down and looked at everything, the texts, the visitation logs, the nights she was out, I felt this strange mix of nausea and clarity. I kept thinking, how the hell did I miss all this? I had trusted her, loved her, and somehow she'd managed to hide this whole side of herself from me. I wondered how long she'd been doing it, how many times she'd slipped away, and what she'd done with him during those visits. It made my blood boil just thinking about it. I knew I couldn't just confront her without anything solid. She was a master manipulator, and I'd learned to be cautious. Still, the evidence was staring me in the face. That night, I decided I'd confront her the next day. I wanted her to see I wasn't some naive fool, that I had discovered everything. But I also knew I had to be prepared for her typical bullshit, her lying, denying, turning things around. That bitch always had an answer for everything. The next morning I woke up early, my mind racing. I brewed a strong coffee and sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the phone I'd secretly kept with her texts loaded. I knew I'd have to do this face to face, but I also wanted her to see that I had all the cards. I was ready to call her out on her lies and finally get some honesty. I grabbed my phone, hesitated for a second, then dialed her number as she was getting ready for work. When she answered, I kept my voice calm but firm. "I know what you've been doing, Lisa," I said. "I know about the visits, about the texts, everything. Don't even try to deny it. I have the proof. You've been cheating on me with Mark, your exoneration lawyer, while I was sitting in prison fighting for my life. Do you even realize what you've done?" There was silence on the other end. Then she started with her usual defensiveness, blaming me, calling me paranoid, saying I was overreacting. She spat out, "You're crazy, Mike. You've always been insecure. You're imagining things, I swear. I've been working late, going to the gym, doing everything I said. You're just jealous because someone else is finally paying attention to me." Her voice was sharp, her tone full of contempt. I could hear the fake facade she was putting on, but I saw right through it. She was scared because she knew I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I let her talk, kept my cool, but inside I was boiling. I told her she could deny all she wanted, but the truth was out. She hung up on me after a few minutes, obviously furious but still trying to play the victim. I knew I had to do something more, something that would make her realize I was serious. I decided I'd wait until she came home, then lay everything out, the evidence, her lies, her betrayal. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be anyone's fool anymore. As the day went on, I felt my mind spiraling. The anger transformed into a deep sadness. I kept replaying our good times, wondering where I went wrong. How did I miss all these signs? Was I so blind that I couldn't see that my wife, the woman I loved, was actively sneaking around with someone I trusted to help me get out of jail? It hit me hard. I'd been fighting for my freedom, but in the process, I'd lost something even more valuable: my trust, my dignity, my marriage. By the time she got home that evening, I was ready. I had everything laid out: screenshots of her texts, printouts of the visitation logs, and I was waiting in the living room with a cold stare. When she walked in, she sensed something was wrong. Her usual bitchy smirk faded instantly when she saw the look in my eyes. I did. Waste time. I just laid it all out piece by piece, making her face every part of her betrayal. Her eyes widened, then narrowed into that typical sneer. "Oh, come on, Mike," she snapped. "You're overreacting. This is all just a misunderstanding. You're making a big deal out of nothing." But I didn't buy her lies anymore. I told her I knew everything about the visits, the texts, the secret meetings, and that she was a cheating, lying piece of shit. Her reaction: she yelled, called me paranoid, accused me of being jealous and insecure. That's her favorite line, like somehow it's my fault she's unfaithful. The real kicker was her trying to turn things around, saying I was the one who betrayed her because I doubted her. She stormed around, throwing accusations, trying to make me doubt myself, but I'd seen enough. I'd caught her red-handed, and I was done playing her game. I told her she could deny it all she wanted, but I wasn't going to stick around and get played anymore. I told her that I was filing for divorce, that she could go ahead and be with her lawyer, Mark, if that's what she wanted. I'd rather be alone than be with someone who'd tear my life apart like she did. She stormed out, screaming, crying, calling me every name in the book. Honestly, I didn't care. I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak. This wasn't how I wanted it to go, but I knew deep down I'd dodged a bullet. Still, the damage was done. I wasn't sure if I'd ever fully recover from the betrayal, but at least now I was free from her lies and her manipulations. Watching her walk out that door felt like a weight lifted, even if it left me completely shattered inside. After she left, I just sat there for a long time, staring at the mess she'd left behind: her clothes thrown on the couch, her makeup kit still open on the table, and that cold, empty silence filling the house. It was surreal. I'd always thought she was my partner, my best friend, someone I could count on no matter what. Turns out she was just an illusion. All the signs were there and I ignored them, blinded by love or maybe just stupid hope. But now I saw everything clearly. She wasn't the woman I thought I knew. She was a liar, a manipulator, a cheat. Suddenly I felt this weird sense of relief mixed with despair. I wasn't going to lie. Part of me wanted to break down, to cry and scream and swear I'd never survive this heartbreak. But another part, the rational part, knew I had to get my shit together. I needed to figure out what I was going to do next. I had been in prison for months, fighting for my innocence, and somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, I'd lost the woman I loved. I remembered the lawyer, Mark, the guy she'd been cheating with. I couldn't believe I'd trusted him too, thinking he was someone who would help me, who was on my side. Instead, he was playing her game, sneaking around behind my back. That realization made my stomach turn. I'd been fighting for my freedom, and she'd been sleeping with the very person who was supposed to be fighting for me. It was so fucked up I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the days that followed, I began to piece things together more deliberately. I contacted the prison to get the official visitation logs myself. No way I was going to let her spin her bullshit anymore. Once I had them in hand, I realized she'd been meeting with Mark every single week, sometimes multiple times. Those visits weren't about legal stuff, they were about her and him screwing around. Every day I stayed behind bars, she was with him, building some sick double life. That's when everything hit me hard: the depth of her betrayal, how much she'd lied, and how deeply she'd hurt me. I started feeling like I was in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. The pain was sharper than I expected. For all those months, I'd fought to prove my innocence, and meanwhile she'd been living a lie. Not just cheating behind my back, but actively working to destroy what little trust I had left. Every moment I had spent trusting her, believing in us, was just a setup for this fall. How could I have been so blind? Despite all this, I knew I couldn't just stay broken. I had to make a decision: not just about her, but about myself. I couldn't keep living in this confusion, this betrayal. I decided I'd file for divorce. I needed to cut her out of my life completely. No more excuses, no more lies. I deserved better. I deserved someone who wouldn't hide behind false smiles and secret meetings with some lawyer who was supposed to be helping me. But as I prepared to move forward, I also knew I'd have to confront my own feelings. I was angry, yes, but beneath that, I was crushed, heartbroken, and feeling pretty damn lost. I'd lost my marriage, my trust, and a part of myself in the process. The betrayal cut deeper than any prison cell ever could. I wondered how I'd ever look at a relationship the same way again, how I could ever trust someone again after all this. It's like my whole worldview had been shattered in one cruel moment. One thing I learned is that people can surprise you in the best ways and the worst. Lisa proved that she was capable of some real monstrous shit, but I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I can survive heartbreak and betrayal, even if it feels like I can't breathe right now. I just hope someday I find a way to forgive myself for trusting her, and maybe, just maybe, I'll find someone who's honest, who values loyalty and truth. But for now, I'm just trying to get through each day without falling apart completely. The days that followed were a blur of legal paperwork, emotional exhaustion, and trying to piece my life back together. I went through the motions, filing for divorce, talking to a lawyer, and trying to block out the image of her sneaking around with Mark. Honestly, I felt numb most of the time, like I'd been drained of all my energy and hope. But beneath that numbness, there was a simmering fire of anger and betrayal that refused to die out. I kept replaying everything in my mind: her dismissive lies, her bitchy smirks, the secret meetings, and the way she tried to gaslight me into believing I was crazy. I'd been her fool for too long, but now I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative, selfish woman who didn't care about me at all. It stung to realize I'd been so blind, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. At least now I knew the truth and I could do something about it. One night I decided I needed closure. I reached out to Mark, the lawyer, just to hear his side of the story. I wasn't planning to confront him directly, more like I wanted to understand how deep this went. I called him, and surprisingly, he picked up. We talked briefly, and I could tell he was nervous. I asked him straight out if they'd been sleeping together, and he didn't deny it. Instead, he tried to justify it, saying they developed a connection, that she was lonely and confused, that it was just sex. Sex. That's all it was. Yeah, right. Hearing him admit it, even in a casual way, made my blood boil. That bastard had been part of her lies, part of her betrayal all along. I told him that I'd be telling everyone I knew about their affair, the legal community, her friends, anyone who would listen. I wanted the world to know what kind of woman she was: a liar, a cheat, a user. Mark tried to play it cool, said it was none of my business, but I didn't care anymore. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. Meanwhile, I started to focus on myself. I enrolled in therapy, figuring I needed help sorting through all the pain and anger. I also hit the gym harder, lifting, running, trying to channel my frustration into something productive. It wasn't much, but it helped. I knew I had to rebuild my self-esteem piece by piece. I couldn't let her victory define me. She'd taken enough: my trust, my marriage, my dignity, and I wasn't going to let her win entirely. One day, I finally sat down and wrote her a letter. Not to send, just to get everything out of my system. I poured my heart into it. How much I loved her, how betrayed I felt, how she'd shattered everything we built. I told her I hated her for what she did, but I also forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed to let go of that anger if I was ever going to move on. I knew I'd never forget what she did, but I wasn't going to let her control my life anymore. That letter was my way of saying goodbye to her, and to the woman I thought I knew. Through all of this, I realized that I had a choice. I could let her betrayal destroy me, or I could use it as a catalyst to rebuild myself. It hurt like hell, but I knew I'd come out stronger in the end. I'd learned that trust can be broken in a second, and that some people are capable of the worst kinds of lies. But I also learned that I didn't have to be a victim of her lies forever. I was going to survive this. I had to. And maybe someday I'd find someone who truly valued honesty, loyalty, and love, something I'd never fully appreciated until now. Looking back now, I realize that this whole experience has changed me forever. The betrayal cut so deep, it almost felt like I'd lost not just my wife, but a part of myself. Still, I managed to pick up the pieces slowly, one day at a time. I moved out of the house she left behind, rented a small place, and started focusing on rediscovering who I am without her. The trust I once had in people is forever scarred, but I've learned to be more cautious, more guarded. It's a bitter lesson, but one I hope to carry into whatever comes next. What hurt the most wasn't just the cheating. It was the way she lied, manipulated, and played me like a fool while I was fighting for my freedom. She didn't just cheat on me. She betrayed everything we ever stood for. That kind of treachery leaves a mark that's hard to erase. But I've also come to understand that some people are just fundamentally broken, incapable of loyalty or honesty. That realization is cold but necessary. In the end, I learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back or getting even. It's about reclaiming your life and dignity after someone tries to destroy it. I didn't want her to get away with what she did, but I also didn't want to drown in anger and bitterness. So I focused on healing myself piece by piece. I still get angry sometimes, still wonder why she could be so cruel, but I also know I won't let her define my future. Now I'm trying to move forward, slowly, cautiously, but with hope. I've started trusting again in small doses. I remind myself that not everyone is like her and that good people still exist. Maybe someday I'll meet someone who values honesty and loyalty as I do. Maybe I'll get a second chance at love, at trust. But for now, I just want to live without the weight of her betrayal dragging me down. Most of all, I want to tell anyone out there who's been betrayed, you're not alone. It hurts, it cuts deep, and it feels like the end of the world, but it's not. You can survive this. You can rebuild. And someday the pain will lessen and you'll look back and realize that what didn't kill you made you stronger. That's what I'm holding on to now. Not her lies, not her betrayal, just the hope that I can find peace again, even with the scars.